It's a classic battle, bourbon versus rye. But with Jack Daniels, we get to do it at high octane. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So, today we get to put head to head two absolutely heavy hitters from Jack Daniels. We've got the Jack Daniels Single Barrel Barrel Proof Bourbon and the Jack Daniels Single Barrel Barrel Proof Rye. These are both known for coming in at pretty high octane proof points, being full force whiskey, both for around $70 to $75, somewhat findable as well. So each of these has kind of earned the right to call itself one of the better values in bourbon and rye. In particular, this rye release, which came out in 2023, is supposed to become more regular and available, kind of like the bourbon has. And this has gotten great reviews. I actually had this in my Whiskey of the Year bracket, and it made it pretty far. And then we've got another favorite of mine and a lot of people, Jack Daniels Single Barrel Barrel Proof Bourbon. So let's just take a quick look at the proof points and specifics here. This is my bottle here of the bourbon is 130.4 proof, which is pretty solid, pretty typical for this release. And then my bottle of the rye is actually only 128.5. So while that's still very high, it is actually a little bit low for this release. In any case, I think this also has sort of a personal dimension for me. As I've developed and tasted more whiskeys, I began my journey very much staunchly a bourbon drinker. The name of the channel is The Bourbon Hutch for a reason. That's what I gravitated toward the most in the beginning, and certainly still favor. But rye has been this category that I really opened my mind to a little bit, and my palate has seemed to go along with that. And I've found myself gravitating toward more and more ryes, and in particular this Jack Daniels one is just spectacular. So what I figured we'd do is just put these up against each other head to head. Not gonna do it blind because I do think that they're pretty distinct and I'd be able to tell them apart with just two, but we're just gonna dive in and evaluate both of them and see which comes out on top today, and if maybe my palate is changing and developing into more of a rye guy, who knows. In any case, let's start with the bourbon and we'll give you a sense of what we're nosing here, then we'll do the rye on the nose, and then we will taste both. So bourbon here, very like ripe banana. Some cinnamon baking spice as well, and strong vanilla. Vanilla, banana pudding. Yeah, definitely a cherry pop in there as well. And then a touch of like maple syrup and brown sugar. But what really jumps out of the glass for me is that vanilla and that like very ripe banana, very fruit forward with that. All right, let's go to the rye on the nose. Compare. Okay, so they're not that different after all. Maybe could have done this blind and wouldn't have been able to pick them apart, although it's just the nose. This is a little bit more candied banana or runts, like banana runts sweetness. So a little bit even more candy sweet than just fruit sweet. Still got the vanilla, but there's more of a floral fruity bite to this one. This one leans more like pancakes and syrup and banana. This one goes more like this rye. It's like candied red cherry lollipop, banana, vanilla, then maybe even this touch of like floral aspect, and also like a pistachio, some sort of savory note, potentially oak as well, lingering in there. So I'd say this one has a little bit more complexity, the rye does, and it goes more candy forward, but I do really enjoy the like pancake syrupy nature of this bourbon. So let's go in on the palate now and we'll get a ton more information. Before we do, just want to say, if you're enjoying all the content coming out of the channel here in 2024, expect that to continue. Would appreciate having you aboard as a subscriber if you haven't hit that red button already. And then also let me know in the comments below, which of these two do you like better, and which do you think is going to come out on top today for me? All right, let's go in on the palate. Cheers. Wow, that lasts a long, long time. Tons of cinnamon heat and brown sugar maple syrup warmth. Very buttery brown sugar, a little bit of that banana, but it's not as pungent on the palate as it was on the nose. Definitely goes more forward with that pancakes and syrup profile. It's really, really good. Okay, now on the back end, I am getting that sweet banana and vanilla pudding kind of note. I would say the finish is really, really long on this, which is great. It's got great cinnamon spice, and it's not really too much ethanol burn per se for something this high proof. So all in all, really, really good. It's more of a 3 to 4 note, really strong experience though. It's like that maple syrup and brown sugar, the kind of pancake aspect to it, and then some of that banana and vanilla. And that's what it does best, and it just kind of sticks in that lane. Let me get some water, and then we'll go over to the rye. All right, let's dive into the rye on the palate. Yeah, it is different. Not nearly as much of the brown sugar pancake note. Instead, this one shares that ripe banana, which it brings more to the forefront, and vanilla pudding. And then it's got a heck of a lot more cherry, like a cherry lollipop again, very candy forward on that. But then it's also got this layer of sweet oak that is really, really nice to add in there, and almost a honey floral punch. This one feels brighter in the mouth. It's got more of a Pop Rocks experience, whereas this had like a cinnamon blooming heat on the bourbon. So the rye, again, just like the nose, I think is transferring over more complexity, and the bourbon is staying in its lane, but doing it very, very well. Finish is also very long here on the rye. Both of these are just so good. I am gonna do a little bit of back and forth here. I'll fast forward through that and then give you guys a recap of what I'm leaning toward here, and also just what my takeaways are for these two products, and hopefully that'll inform your decision in terms of going after one of these. All right, everybody, I've been able to do another round of tasting here, nosing, and just let these sort of develop a little bit. To recap that for you, the rye, that savory note jumped in on the palate this time, a little bit like a black pepper, pistachio savoriness that added another layer of complexity. The bourbon, I think the punch of the palate maybe fades a little bit because it's so 3 or 4 note forward, but the nose has opened up and is absolutely gorgeous, almost just like sniffing a slice of French toast. So my final breakdown here is I'd give the nose to the bourbon, so rich and very, very maple syrup breakfast dessertiness. I'd give the palate to the rye for the complexity and depth that it brings. I'd say it's a tie on the finish. Both of them have very long finishes that linger for a good while. If I had to give a definitive winner today, I honestly might be leaning toward the bourbon. Part of that is it's, again, a cold winter day, and I think that vibe is just hitting me really, really well. So I'd give it to the bourbon because I think the palate is really, really good, just maybe a half notch below the rye, and the nose is spectacular. The rye, because it's complex, is just the more interesting whiskey and probably the more interesting purchase, to be honest with you. So the way I'd put it for you, if you're looking into one of these two, is probably worth it to get both, just because they'll offer you different things, and they're both really, really good. But if you're more of a bourbon person who really likes that dessert-forward breakfast kind of profile, and you want something full force, the bourbon, the Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Barrel-Proof Bourbon is a great choice. If you are intrigued by rye, want to explore it more, and want something that's not going to take you too far away from bourbon and still be, full force, I think the rye is a great option. Adds a lot of complexity. This is the one I think I'll find more interest in throughout the year. the bourbon just has its sweet spot where it's like, oh, I'm craving something super brown sugar maple syrup. I'm gonna grab this. So that's my breakdown here. There's no real winner or loser. I'll give it to the bourbon today, which is kind of surprising how much I like the rye. I'm just gravitating toward the bourbon because it's a nice cold winter day. Again, the rye is spectacular though. So hopefully that's informative for you guys. I know I didn't really pick a winner and that's a bit waffling, but I think it's worth it to just highlight how good both of these are. So for 70 to 75 bucks, hopefully somewhat available around you, these are worth a pickup and worth having so that you have something super high octane, full force, especially for potentially those cold winter days or days where you just want something to knock your socks off and just come forward with a ton of flavor. That's gonna wrap it up, everybody. Again, let me know in the comments below, which one of these two do you gravitate towards if you've tasted both, or are you hunting one of these and hoping to get your hands on it? Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey, both bourbon and rye, because honestly, both are awesome when you do it right. And cheers.